Hello, everyone. Welcome to the workshop today on Teams integration options. Just going to give a couple minutes here for folks to join up with the call. So we'll get going in just a moment, but just want to get the webinar going so that we can get started. So just give it another minute. We'll let some folks join, and then we'll get going. All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get going here. We got most everyone's joined that's going to. So appreciate everyone for coming on today to talk about the new Teams integration stuff we have with NITRO workflows. We're going to be adding these custom actions as well. I don't believe it's there yet, but the workflows, that's what I'm going to focus on today, just to kind of show you what you can do with this Teams integration. There's going to be deeper Teams integration. This is sort of a somewhat narrowly focused workshop today on the new actions we've added to our workflow tool for creating Teams channels and notifying Teams channels and posting adaptive cards. I will, if there's some interest, so you have some questions, type in the question box anything that you want to ask about. I can talk about maybe some of the deeper integrations we have with Teams, but today is really kind of focused on the workflow actions we recently added to our workflow tool. So you should be seeing on the screen the NITRO Studio workshops. So we're talking about the one today, the how to interact with Teams. There will be more added as we go here. I'll give you a preview and a couple other ones that we're going to be talking about in the not too distant future. So we'll just go ahead and get into this particular these particular Microsoft Teams actions that we just released. So the three new actions we've added to our NITRO Workflows tool are over here in the workflow actions. Let me go ahead and minimize my webinar screen there. Okay, we're good. So you'll see down below, if you update NITRO Studio, and this is because it's a Teams integration, it is going to be kind of specific to the Office 365 world. So if anyone on the call today is on premises, it's probably, might not be applicable to you. Because it's just released for Office 365 world. But if you're using Teams on-prem, let me know in the comments, let me know in the questions box, and that could be something we look at as a feature development. But right now, today, these actions are released for Office 365, and Microsoft 365 now, I guess, for users. And you'll see on the actions list all of our normal actions that you know and love. We have added down here Microsoft Teams. So if I pop that open, it's a little bit of a UI issue with it moving over to the right, so apologize for that. But if I hover on that, you can see there's these three new actions over here: create a Teams channel, send mail to Teams channel, and post an adaptive card. Really, the one I want to focus on most is this post an adaptive card, because I think that is going to give you the most power and it's going to be the most intriguing option of the three we've added. But the other two are great too, and I'll talk about those. Just give you a quick overview of what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing, and maybe some use cases for that. So to talk about creating a Teams channel, I'm just going to pop that one open for seeing the action settings. You can, within an existing team, create a sub-channel, create a channel. These are not sub-channels, they're just channels within that team. And the reason you might want to do that is, let's say you're using our project management tool, or you have some kind of project management process. You want to create a team for that. So there's a team that is there for maybe talking about a merger and acquisition as a project, or is a team talking about upgrade to a new infrastructure as a project. Things like that. You want to create a channel. You want to create that communication mode for them to work together. That's what Teams is all about, working together, of course, collaboration. So this is a way to automatically create that team, or create that channel within a team. Automatically, as you know, with Teams, or you might be aware, when you create a new channel, everyone in that team where the channel is created is automatically a part of that channel. So that's why you're not seeing any options here to add users. That's all are handled by the team creation itself. So when you're creating a team, you can see here the options are really, really straightforward. You give it the name, action name, like you name any of our actions in our tool, just give it a name that you can refer back to. You can write up a description about it if you want to refer, why did you create this action? Okay, well, you can look at the description, kind of like a comments field. And if you've updated Nitro in the last few months, you should be seeing this everywhere. You can do delay execution. But here's where you can choose the team that you want to create the channel under. So you have your drop list of options here. And then the membership type can be standard or private. So the standard option is kind of like the classic regular teams that most people create. They're visible, they're discoverable, whereas the private ones are not discoverable. And that's one of the reasons you might want to do is if you have some kind of sensitive topic, or you want to limit it to a group of people that are within that team and no one else, then you want to use the private options. That means it's going to be invite only to join that team, but you can choose either one. The display name, you put whatever text you want for the display name of that team. We also have this option with these binoculars to add placeholders. So this could be part of a broader workflow that you've put together for approval. Let's say you want to do like a Teams channel approval flow, because part of governance might be that you need to approve creation of that channel before it gets created. So if you want to do that, you create this governance flow, you create this approval flow. Once everything gets approved, maybe the person's put in what they want to call the channel, they've marked whether they want it private or not, they've marked maybe some other information about it. You can use some of these placeholders and then use that as the name. So if they've entered something into their form to say, I want the channel to be called X, you can pull that up. I don't have a specific field for that, but let's just go ahead and choose, I don't know, title. Let's go ahead and choose title. Where's that? Back down in the T's. Where are you? Title. Here we go. So here's your placeholder for that. You're going to see this throughout these Teams actions. And you do see this in other places in our workflows and custom actions where we use this, kind of percentage, percent before, percent after, and that that tells the system it's a placeholder. So we use that. We also have the internal name and the display name here on the within the placeholder section within the square brackets. Always recommend just if you can double click from here. It just makes it easier to put it on there. I mean, this could be you could put it in a string here if you want. So you could do piping to separate the two, and that could be the name of your then becomes the name of your channel that you've created, that you're going to be creating. So you can use those placeholders if you want to do that. Let's go ahead and cancel this guy. And then you give it a description. So your team's channels all have descriptions on them. If you create a new team, you get an option to create a description. So again, you can put a placeholder here and take that input from a form someone filled out to approve that channel. To request approval for that channel, you can put that description in here, and that becomes part of the creation of that channel. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy stuff. So there's nothing too crazy going on here. The next one we've added in for Microsoft Teams here is if it'll come up, notifying a channel, send mail. So you may or may not know this, but all your teams and all your channels have email addresses. So if you go into your team, I'll show you how to find it. If you go into your team, so I have Teams open here on my screen, you can go to your one of your teams. You can go to, let's say, general support here. You can go to get email address. So it's that simple. Just click on the ellipsis. You see get email address. It's right there. So it's going to be some kind of funky thing. This is going to be kind of a long string. It's got this whatever code on it and blah blah blah. But that's basically it. I mean, every Teams channel has this. So if you send an email from anywhere, your email box, this workflow as part of any other workflow, it can post in that team. So you can do it through this workflow that we're creating, or you could even do it as part of like a send mail workflow, perhaps. I think you could even do that. But the workflow itself has the option to send that email, of course, or you could directly specify the channel, right? So again, you got the action name up here at the top. That's pretty common. You got the team, so we can select our team from here. We do support. We select our channel from here. We got general. So you see, you can directly email to it, and it actually popped in that email address directly below it, so it knows because we have this Teams connection. And I'll show you just a minute. How to connect the SharePoint and Teams and NITRO and Teams and all that. But you can see it went to Teams, it pulled in that email address, and now we know, okay, this is the email address for that channel. It's going to post it up in Teams, whatever you send in this email. And it's got the standard email template that you've seen in other places in our program. So I won't go into that in too much detail, but you can create your own mail template, and that gets sent and added to the team as something like as if someone was chatting in that Teams channel. It just populates the content of that email in there. So you want to be careful. You don't want to have too much stuff in there. You don't want to have a lot of data because it could just make the Teams channel difficult to read. So you might want to just really limit it to fairly simple notifications, updates, that kind of stuff. And then you also have the option here for what type of mail format to use. So that's that. So those are those two, and certainly, I encourage if you have any questions as we go through this, let me know. We'll get them answered. If we can't get them answered today, we'll follow up with you afterwards to get those questions answered. So feel free to pop in there anytime you want. But as far as this next one here, this post-adaptive card, I think this is really going to be the most interesting one and give you the most kind of power. And actually, I'm going to back out of this and show you one that's already pre-configured, because that's going to make a little more sense to kind of walk through it. So just back out for a moment here. And we'll go to IT Premium. That's where we're working from. And this one. So you see what we created here is a workflow for sending a Teams message to an approver. So this is part of an approval workflow. So now the person who's doing that approval doesn't have to leave the context of Teams, doesn't have to sign into SharePoint or open up an item or respond to an email. They can actually directly approve and deny this from Teams itself. There are a couple of prerequisites. I'll talk about those in just a minute, but really it's pretty easy to set up. You have you set your conditions or whatever. You have your action post adaptive card, and I'll show you what this looks like. So it's just going to send a Teams message. You see here's your placeholders again. You got your percents as placeholders, and you can pretty much have any kind of string in here to give it a title. And you'll see that it maps over here to card title, heading, subheading. All that stuff's outlined on the left-hand side, and you can see what it looks like on this right-hand image. But just make it a little more clear. I've actually already run through a process and created this adaptive card for one of our team members here. So this is submitted an item. It needs approval. I'm logged in as James or Stevo, so it's going to notify me through the SelfService Bot to update, do some kind of approval, do some kind of denial, or make a decision about this situation. So you can see here already we got the ID, and it's got that spit dash, and it's got the title of the item. So if you go back to, if you go back to, hold on, what just happened there? I'll just go back this way. Here you can see here's your ID placeholder, and here's your title. The card image. So the card image is kind of interesting. It's really, user means, it doesn't mean like the actual user. It just means a generic, kind of a generic image. So if you go back to our team setup here, this is what it is. It's just like a generic user image. I mean, that's all it is. But you can put other images in there if you want. And you see there's, you can select an image, which could be, I think, from your, let's see, from your computer perhaps. Let's see, enter your image URL. So that, that's what appears on the card over here. Image size, of course, could be, medium, small, medium, or large. We've got medium here. And then you can put it to the right or left. In this example, it's on the right. And then you got your heading. So you can see the heading is right here below the card title. And if we go look at our card over here, there's the heading right there. So it's got the category and the issue type. Again, we're using those placeholders. Category and issue type right there. Subheading is going to be requester. You can see there's the subheading right there. And then if we go back to over here, there's our subheading. So it doesn't have to be requester, of course, could be whatever you want, but this is sort of information you probably need to know if you're going to be trying to make an approval from here. Especially for this kind of process, you want to try to put in as much information as is useful for that person to make their decision. If that is, if you have a lot of information here, again, it could get really, lengthy. It may not look that great. So you want to be really kind of judicious about what you put on that card to make sure it looks good, and make sure the person using it is going to be able to make that decision based on what is in there. So we have some columns. I'll show you I'll go back over here. Subheading, description, column value. So you can directly add columns. So you saw there's property, priority, and due date. We can actually add, again, this is where you can get into trouble if you add too many columns. It could get kind of funky looking, but you do have an option to add really as many columns as you want. Any of the columns from your list are going to be here. So again, just be careful about that, but you can certainly add whatever column you want onto that card in order to enable that user to make a decision. And then you see there's a couple actions here. So that's actually coming from the card as well. So you create those actions. And these actions, there's a few different ones we can do. You can create a list item. So that could actually be someone, maybe not even an approval process, some other kind of process where you want the user to create an item, or the approval of the item actually, let's say it's a project. You want to submit a project for approval to do the project, and you want to create a project in a list item for that project. You could do that. So instead of an approval, it really just directly creates that item. So they can go and create it, and that becomes a project in that list. Or it could be for other scenarios as well, like create a list item. And you have a lot of options here for what it does. Actually, I'm going to back out of this and just kind of pull up one of these because they're all kind of similar. So you see the approve one is, it's got the action name, description, submit button text is okay. So if you hit, so that's actually what appears when you hit the approve. It's going to ask you, is that okay? And you hit okay, and it goes through. And then success message is purchase request approved. So that you'll see that here in previous iterations of doing this, purchase request approved. That's what, once it's done, it just closes out this box and says this, and that's where it's coming from, right here. So that's updating the card. Or it could be a separate Teams message. So if we did it as a separate Teams message, what would happen is it would say this and leave the card on there, which you may not want, because now that decision, it could be made again. So probably best practice is actually update the card, and that we don't have that potential to reenact some decision. The only drawback here, the only, I guess, limitation I should say, the success message doesn't take placeholders, so you're going to be a little limited. It's just going to say purchase request was approved or denied, or whatever you want it to say, but it may not have any real information as to what was done. So there's a little bit of a limitation there, but just making you aware of it. And then when they hit approve, they're going to have the option to, it's going to change the approval status, and it's going to add a approver comment. So when I go and hit approve, you'll see what happens there. So it's going to mark it as approved, and it's actually going to take an input as a comment. So let's go back to our thing here. If I hit approve, right? So here, approve this purchase request, approver comment. So here's where it's asking me to enter that comment. So that's where that user input field is coming from, right here. So that's going to go and update the approval comment, which exists on the approval list, and it's going to make that comment. And then you see the submit button text where it says OK here. You see that's where it is here. Okay. So that button text could be whatever you want it to be based on what you've entered in your settings for that action for the adaptive card. Then you can also invoke a NITRO workflow, which once it's done, we have, I think, this approval process handled through different scenarios. So that's why we don't have a workflow specifically on this example. But if you wanted to invoke a workflow after that decision is made, you can do so. And in that vein, you don't even have to update columns. You could just leave that part blank and just run a workflow. And maybe that's part of the process. Kind of, just a lot of different options and how you might want to do things. And we want to make sure you have those options available so you're not locked into one specific way of doing things versus another. Whoops. Let me pop this open. Okay. So then, so go ahead and cancel that. So you can see, actually, yeah, if you want to just invoke a workflow, you can just simply do that. So you don't even have to do the update action or any of that stuff. You can just simply invoke the workflow, as I was just saying. And the create list item is going to be very similar, except we're not updating an existing item. We're going to go and create a new item in some list, and we decide where that is. We decide what the column mapping is. We can invoke a workflow for that item or the new item that we create. So it kind of gives you some options here for doing, invoking those workflows and taking some action after the person has interacted with that adaptive card. All right. Oh, you can also have a link back to the item as well. You see here's that placeholder ID, ID equals ID. All right. Any questions on the adaptive card? Let me see if there are any in there. No. All right. So it looks like we're good. Again, feel free to use that question box whenever you have any questions on what we're doing or how to set up, or if you have specific scenarios that you want to maybe bounce off me if it could work or not, let me know. You can pop it in that question box. But so those are those three actions that we've added to our NITRO Workflows tool. We're going to be adding similar actions to our custom actions tool so that you can use it either through a workflow or through the custom action. The next thing I want to show you here is kind of kind of going back a little bit to what you need to do to set this up and make this work for your environment. So there are some prerequisites. There are some things you're going to need to do to set up this Teams integration. It's not just about setting up the workflow. There's actually some API access and things that we need to grant. Fortunately, we have articles about this on our .help site. So if you go to croquet.help, you can see there's this article 616, which talks about basically what I just showed you, how to send an approval to an individual through the Teams interface. And the couple things that you need to do before you can do that, you can see there's two steps really before you can configure your workflows. There's configuring the Teams connection and configuring the bot application. So you probably noticed, or maybe didn't, but when this adaptive card is coming up, it's coming from this thing called the SelfService Bot. So this is an out-of-the-box bot that we have in our NITRO applications page. You can go to the AI services or bot services, and you can see what this. You can start configuring it. So right now, just to give you a little insight, that bot is pretty specific to our ticketing programs like IT, facilities, request management, if you have HR ticketing. We are going to make it more generic to apply to purchase requests, onboarding, and even other solutions or other non-Crocanian solutions, of course. But right now it's sort of specific to those scenarios. So just want to the request management based applications, IT based applications, ticketing based applications. So I just want to make you aware of that as we go, as you see this. But the bot is kind of the key, especially for the adaptive card. Now, for the creating the Teams channel and notifying a Teams channel, you don't need that bot set up necessarily. You only need to do the Teams integration, which I'll show you that article as well. So that's P0, number one thing to do, configure Teams connection in NITRO. To do that, it's fairly straightforward. I'm not going to walk through it in detail because I think it's a little outside of the scope of what we want to talk about today in the workshop. We'll probably have another workshop about how to set up the self-service bot specifically, and we'll probably talk about this Teams connection as well. But the article lays out fairly clearly as far as what you need to do to connect the Teams API or connect that Crocanian API to your Teams environment or Teams setup. So if you come in here, you can see you go to NITRO site settings. There's this page in your site settings. Under site settings, go to NITRO site settings, Teams connection, and you do these couple steps here where you grant permissions. They enable API access if you haven't already. And then, one thing to know is you should be a administrator for the site or administrator for the tenant in order to grant these permissions, because it does operate at a higher level. Since it is coming from SharePoint and connecting over to Teams, you want, typical users might not have that level of permission to grant that. So you want to make sure that you have someone in there who is able, kind of a tenant admin who can do stuff like that to accept that permission. So then you click API access, you can enable it for your tenant if it's not already enabled. And there's a few other steps here as far as checking things in, checking out. So a couple modern web parts and things like that. If you have your own API credentials, you can do that. So if you want to set up your own, that's fine. Rather than using the Graph API or the Crocanian API, that's fine. You can do that. But it's really pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's just about granting the permission and making sure that you've enabled that Teams integration. Now, again, once you've done that, that allows you to do the create channel and notify channel options. So that for the adaptive card, though, it does take this extra step where you need to configure this bot application. So it's a little more involved. Again, it's a little outside the scope of what I wanted to talk about today with you, but certainly something we can address in a future workshop more specifically. So just to kind of walk through what it has, you have these steps to integrate bot application with Crocanian. And again, you can see this is where it kind of is specifically geared towards that request management, the IT, that facilities kind of world where we have these kind of specific things. It sort of was born out of this whole idea of a Q&A bot where you have self-service, have the self-service option for users to come in, ask a question, and then generate a ticket from that question. So that's kind of where it was born out of and kind of why it's specific to that world at the moment. But that is certainly something we are addressing in our development team to get this a little more generic to make it more applicable across other types of applications. But you can see here, you guys specify these things which are pretty specific to those request management IT applications. And there's a few things that we need to do here for these ticket list configurations. And it gets fairly involved with this Lewis. So to talk about, getting into natural language processing, this Lewis understanding, things like that. It kind of gets, like I said, I'm not going to get into the weeds of this too much, but just kind of give you an idea. It does, it has a little complexity to it to set it up, but honestly, once you get it set up, it's really a fantastic tool to use in your organization, with Crocanian for creating these self-service bots. And one of the things that I want to show you here, let's see if I can do this. With this self-service bot, once you get it configured, it gives you some options. So here, let's see. So within the bot itself, you have these options for selecting the application. If you have multiple Crocanian applications, you can view open requests, you can search a request, or if you have a question, you can start a conversation with the bot and then potentially create a new ticket out of it. So, though it does take some time to set up and take some work to do it, it really gives you a lot of power, a lot of functionality in Teams itself. So this is another kind of side of our Teams integration. You got the workflows that can, do the things that we were just talking about today. But then you also have these other options once you get that bot created to do these things like for viewing requests and selecting applications and things like that. So there's actually quite a bit there, and I think there's, if I go back over here, another thing we're working on, there's a self-service bot, which is kind of specific to, that adaptive card, requesting, information. There's also a staff support bot for your internal, users, for your IT staff, perhaps, where you are, you can see there's a few more things that you can do here. You can view requests assigned to you, unassigned requests, search requests using search key, open request by case ID, create a new request, and search KB. All right through Teams. You don't have to leave the context of Teams at all. Once you get these bots set up, the staff bot and the self-service bot, you can do all your work through Teams. And another side of this, we just released this. You can try this out with, if you have any modern sites. I think it works best with modern versus classic. If you have any modern sites, you can, they're using the Crooked application in NITRO. When you use this plus button over here, you can actually add it directly to your Teams environment. So let's say I wanted to add SharePoint. Where's SharePoint? Right here. It's going to give me an option to choose a site. So these are the options from the team, from the site. As you probably know, when you create a team or you create a channel, it's going to create a SharePoint site for you, like a collaboration site. But you could also add a page or list from any SharePoint site. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say we want to add, let's just go ahead and add this workspace, as a matter of fact. Save that. It says it's not supported. All right, let me do this. Let's do the home page. Of course, it's not going to be supported. The classic rule of demos is it's not going to work. I honestly, actually, I didn't try this beforehand, so that's probably why it's running into some problems here. Here we go. It's probably this one, Workspaces home. Let's try that one. Let's see, where was I? Right here. No, not supported. Okay. All right. Well, leave that be for a moment. But that's kind of the idea, is that you can let's see. Actually, let me try this. Modern workspaces / home.aspx. It may be because those are classic sites and not modern sites. Now it's not working. All right, it's not working for me today, but the idea is that you can get in there and add basically a page to your Teams channel, Teams, to any of the channels really, or you could do it at the top level, any of the channel, general channel, common channel, whatever. You can add it there, and you can actually open up items from there. You can edit tickets from there. You can do everything you can in SharePoint through the interface of Teams. So if you have your whole IT team working from one channel or one team in Teams, you can bring that SharePoint interface directly into Teams itself, and your users don't have to have a browser open and don't have to have the other, you don't have to log into multiple places. It's all right through Teams. So, furthering what we're doing with Teams integration, we're basically giving you the option and opportunity to work pretty much entirely through the Teams interface, where you don't even have to leave it. That's pretty much almost fully supported. And if there's any gaps, if you try this out, if there's any gaps that you see, certainly let us know. We're working through ourselves and identifying any gaps in that interaction and that process. But that's essentially, the take-home message here is that we're, as a company, we're really gearing, seeing Teams and gearing our efforts towards Teams integration and seeing Teams as your launch pad for your day-to-day activities. And I think Microsoft is in that same vein. That's kind of where they're going with everything too. So I hope you've started integrating with Teams already. I hope you've you're going down that path already. And if you're not starting down that path yet, I highly encourage you to do so. And certainly, what we're doing with Crow Canyon is going to give you a lot of options to do your day-to-day activities with our powerful business applications right in Teams itself. All right, so it looks like we don't have any open questions at the moment. So I just want to dig into some of the upcoming webinars we have, some of the things we're going to be talking about. As I mentioned, for the workshop side of things, we don't have anything posted yet, but ideally we're going to be talking about a little more about that Teams integration and bot integration that I kind of glossed over today, but we'll dig into that in a little more detail. As far as other webinars we're talking about, but pretty much exactly what I was just saying. Integrate your service desk with Power Microsoft Teams. That's what I'm saying. So if you want more, if you want to join that webinar and talk about that real detailed stuff, talk about that specifically, where you can integrate with Teams and do everything from Teams. Scott's going to be talking about that on July 16th next week. It's really going to dig into that in more detail as far as what you can do. And then, continuing on our, the deprecation of InfoPath. I don't know if any guys on this call today are using it, but if you are, stop. Please don't use InfoPath anymore. It's going away. It's deprecated. Nitro Forms, you all have Nitro Forms already, or if you don't, you should get it soon, because it's really, from everything we're seeing, it's the go-to tool for getting off of InfoPath. So we're going to be talking more about that on July 23rd, a little bit later this month. So certainly, if you have any interest in those topics, I think everyone on this call today should probably be interested in this one. So please join that call next week. As always, these are recorded. As always, we're going to post these up on our website for future viewing. So if you don't get a chance to join it live, it's always going to be available for you from our website. You can see there's a whole video library that we have that's available for viewing. So with that, again, I thank you all for joining today and walking through this Teams integration story with me. And I look forward to continuing this discussion in future webinars and workshops. And if you have any specific questions or needs about Teams integration, or want to talk to us about bot applications and things like that, give us a call, send us an email. Happy to have that discussion. With that, I'll let you have the rest of the hour back, about 20 minutes left of it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care. See you soon.